Hello and welcome. I am Margherita Lotus, and I have here with me Heidi Hornlein. And in this episode of Connections for relationship expressions and healing, we are going to talk about the many voices of ego. I'm a life and business mentor, and Heidi, you are what? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Heidi, as you said, and what to say? I'm a life coach, a life counselor, and I'm a voice coach. And I'm working with men and women in relationships, and I really want to bring out the message that our relationships can be better, much better than we were used to in our past. And
yes, that's very important. And so, would you bridge the topic of today, which is very exciting? I had a feedback from last week from a client saying that I really liked this topic about ego, and I said to her, we're going to do a next episode this week. So that's a nice feedback, I think. So take it away. What is the many voices of ego?
You are asking me the connection of ego and relationships. This is a big, big, big connection. Really, because we bring our egos in our relationship, and how they are working out, this will determine how our relationship will go on.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you identify the ego? Can we define ego first again to see what that is? So we're going to do this within a relationship, the ego in the relationship, which they pan out and shows up, right? These parts of ego shows up in relationships, so that's why it's very important. So yeah. What is ego?
Yeah, last week you gave your definition of ego, and we had quite a wonderful talk about it. This week I would take a slightly different route, because for me, I often hear about ego, and it seems something out there, a piece, something. And you don't really know what an ego is. And I have found out, I mean, not only me, but I find it very, very useful to think about the ego as the bunch of immature voices you have in yourself. So, for instance, when you have a voice in yourself which says, oh, you are not good enough, you better don't do that, this is an ego voice, part of your ego. Or if somebody has the voice in him or herself who says, oh, I am the boss, I know to do everything and I can do everything, I'm unstoppable, this is another possible voice of the ego. Or somebody else who has the voice, oh, I cannot do anything, I'm helpless, oh, what can I do, I have to endure the life. This is another voice of the ego. Or another possibility is, oh, I have to do all by myself. Nobody is helping me. Nobody is supporting me. I'm all alone, all alone. I cannot trust anybody. I have to do and to be alone. All these are facets of the ego, and there are a whole lot of these voices inside ourselves, and they change in the context and so on. But I think we can group them together in certain categories, let's say, like I'm alone, I am invisible, I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I don't have, all these beliefs which we might have inside, and everybody has some of these beliefs. These are parts of the ego. And what I would define as an ego is let's say, the connection, the collection, the meta entity, which contains all these little voices which we have inside and which probably trouble a little bit our lives. Maybe we're not aware of it.
Very, very well when you say, oh, I don't, yeah, like this this is really illustrating some of these voices, right? I think that many can relate to those voices. So what do you do with them when you discover, yeah, I have this voice, I'm not good enough, or I'm the boss, or whatever? First of all, how can you discover that you actually have that voice?
You know, you can discover that because they are expressed in certain of your patterns. You find out, for instance, I have to do it all alone, I am alone. You find out that you always try to get into a relationship and you end up alone. Or you have to go away because it's not, you cannot bear this relationship, or the other person just disappears. Or you don't have friends, not close friends, or you bring out an idea, everybody is enthusiastic, and then when it comes to working on it, bringing it out into the world, you find yourself alone. And if you, this is just an example of one of these false beliefs, when you find out that this happens so often, and it's repeating all the time, you might become curious. You might think, oh, maybe there is something I can find out. And when you begin to understand the dynamics of these, what we call false beliefs, how they play out in the relationship to yourself, in the relationship to others, and in the relationship of, we can say, to the world, that means what you believe is possible for you, and that it's really a sort of a fixed thing that's always happening in this way, then you might think that your aloneness is not your destiny, but it is a voice in yourself which has been created itself, let's say, in your childhood probably, or even later, but it is an older, a younger voice in age, you know, but a long time ago that these voices were created. And probably they were very useful in your youth, you know, when you found out that you went to your brothers and asked for help, and they ridiculed you and didn't help you anyway. So when you are 4 or 5 or 6, you think, oh, I better don't go out and ask for help because I end up so disappointed and so smashed. And so you get into the mindset, I better do everything by myself. And then when you grow older in this mindset, you do everything by yourself and you get very good in doing things. And, you know, this is fine as long as you really work alone or be alone. But as soon as you enter into a relationship, for instance, and you show up and want to do everything by yourself, you don't allow your partner to support you. You don't allow your partner to come near to you. Because as I talk from the perspective of a woman, men like to support their women, to make life nice for them. And if you say, no, no, I don't need your help, they feel superfluous. And sooner or later, when they don't have any way to reach you and to be near you and to demonstrate you their support and their love in their own way, when you always negate that to them, you will drive them away. And then they disappear. And you said, oh, I always get these people who disappear, who don't like me. First they say they would stay all my life, and then they go away. And you don't notice that your behavior, driven by these childhood beliefs, has driven them away.
That's mind-blowing, Heidi. That is mind-blowing. I could really relate to one of my partners in the past. He didn't want any help whatsoever, and I felt so disappointed by that. I could so relate to that. And you know, he has this person complained about other people that, yeah, no woman would want him. And now when you said that, I related to that. He described himself, and of course he is alone now.
This is what happens.
So true.
This is what happens. People, this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. People complain to be alone, for instance, when you use this false belief, and they do unconsciously everything to drive people away and not allow them to come into their life and take part in their life. And as we talk about relationship, this is so, so important that you create this we space, this togetherness with your partner. And that means that you allow the partner to support you. Actually, I really had to learn it too, because I was so autosufficient and I had to run here my retreat center and everything all by myself. And when Mark came into my life, he said, you know, I'm here, I can help you, you don't have to do that all alone. And for me, it was sort of an automatism that I took over all responsibilities, did all alone. So I had to learn to allow him to do his part and not to interfere when he did his part, because then there comes the old conviction, oh, I know it better, you know. And so I come in and we have, for instance, the agreement that I cook and he cleans up the kitchen. And at the beginning, I always came out and said, oh, but this, you still have to do this and this and this. And he said, oh, let me alone, this is my job. And I really had to learn to allow him to do the things in his way and not to think and to be convinced that I know everything better. I mean, I know some of these things better, but it is a different way to talk about that and to give out of my experience advice how it can be better. And we had quite a bit to struggle about this at the beginning.
So this is a very difficult journey you're envisioning here, that I have to change.
Exactly. You don't have to change, but if you want to overcome this ego-driven being that you are, you need to know what parts in you are working out in your relationship to yourself, and as I said, to others, because there you see it earlier. When you are all alone all the time, you know, you get used to yourself and you know, you won't notice these things. But as soon as you are together with somebody else, all these, what we call younger selves, pop up. And we could call it ego parts pop up. You know, this habitual way of doing and being and believing, which is quite rigid.
It's very important that what you're saying, Heidi, because everyone has these voices, and maybe everyone on the call here can actually visualize themselves saying the same thing as we have as an example there, right? But where do you begin to actually say, okay, I can change? What process can we use to actually start the work?
Yeah, starting the work is becoming aware of these voices. Listen to what is going on in your head. When you, for instance, failed with a task, what are you telling you? You are a failure, you never do it right, or do you tell you, oh, I see, you did it wrong, but you know, we will learn that. What do you normally tell yourself in these situations, Margherita?
I sometimes have, like, I happened something yesterday. I missed writing down the number of the parcel I was sending this parcel to, the person I sent the parcel to, and I missed writing the number, so I got the parcel back, and I was just and then my first thought was that, well, she had the wrong address in the PayPal notification, right? But you know, I just immediate thing was to try to blame PayPal, right? Or her for not having the right address. But you know, it wasn't true. It was me got distracted and forgot to add the street number on there. So I was like very grumpy about myself to actually have done that, because now I have to go to the post office again and ship it and pay the shipping 4 times instead of 1 time, really.
Yeah, you mentioned very important two parts. The first thing is something went wrong and somebody is to blame, you know. And in the relationship, normally it's my husband, you know. This is a very old game that we want to defer responsibility. We know somebody is guilty, but we don't want to be it ourselves, the guilty one, you know. And so we say, you did that, if we can. If we can't, if we find out that in this case it was your fault that you didn't copy the number, then we say, you, in this case me, you are wrong and you are to blame. And we treat us as if we were the other person. And you know what happens there is that probably we repeat a pattern which we had in childhood. When we did something wrong, a parent or an elder, brother, sister, whoever said, you are guilty, you did it wrong. And we, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I better disappear from from Earth. And we were used to getting blamed for what we did wrong. Instead, somebody should help us and say, okay, next time you show me before and I will remind you, or something like that. We just get blamed and left there. We say, like, alone in the cold, you know, without really knowing what we need to do. So we develop the consciousness of, if we don't want to enter in such a horrible situation, you know, we better blame ourselves first, so we may be safe from the blame of the other people.
Yeah, I think you're hitting a nerve there, because like I can really feel, I was really frustrated. First I was frustrated, no, not this again, you know. And then I must admit, when you ship a lot of parcels, sometimes I could miss something, right? It's human. But I really was angry with myself. I have to say that. I was angry with myself. I should know better, and I should have checked it, and I should have, whatever. And all of that had taken up quite a lot of energy space. And then I have to do new actions. I have to now again go to the post office, and that frustrates me even more, right? So how can I change how I react to myself here and I really beat myself up yesterday, that I have to tell you that. And then I stayed in that emotion for a while and got really grumpy, and you know, so how do I actually grab hold of that, in your view, to change it?
Yeah, first of all, realize that this person who is beating you up is not you, the adult, resourceful person, but it is also this younger self who tries to protect you from the blame of other people. So it is a younger entity in you which really tries to protect you. But you know, you don't have anybody to blame around anymore. I mean, anybody who would blame you for getting a number on a parcel. So this originally working process, which you have found out, is not working as an adult. It's not working anymore. What it does is to lets you down. It diminishes your energy, and makes life difficult. So if you have recognized that this controller voice is in his controlling seat on you, and this punisher who thinks, and we know now that it doesn't work, this punisher thinks that punishing and pushing people down, diminishing people would educate them and make things better. The opposite is the case, because people normally shut down when they are blamed. They hide. And
well, I have to tell you, Heidi, that when I stood there in the post office and got this parcel back, I had a little thought there, maybe I can remember the number. But then I got so frustrated and I shut that down, and then that punisher came out. So later I wasn't going to go to the food store and buy some food. Instead, I went right home, because if the snowstorm is coming and we have to go home, and I felt like I was actually punishing myself. It's so vicious, and it happens in a span of like this.
Exactly. And you, as you asked, how can we proceed in this process? This is the first thing, to become aware and disidentify of this punisher, critical voice, knowing that's not really you. And this is where the ego discourse comes in. You know, this is a part of this ego who tries to dominate you. In the past, it tried to save you, but now as an adult, it tries to dominate you and makes your life very, very difficult. And then the next shift is, you understand that, you know, it can happen, as you said. It's human to forget something sometimes. And you can shift into a position where you have compassion with yourself and really begin to love yourself and say, oh, okay, it happened. Now I have to go again. Can happen. No problem. I lose time, half an hour, but it's nothing really wrong. It's nothing horrible happened so that you need some strict and severe measurement. It's just that, not more. And be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, this is something, it goes to my core. I think this example is very good, because I'm sure many of you who listened to this can relate to this sort of nagging, you shouldn't have done it, and then to get rid of that inner voice and let go of it and say, no, it's okay. I have to clean up my mess. That's okay. And I'll just do it. And then I leave that punishing part or that icky feeling I had. I mean, I can tie it in very quickly, but I could also say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. Well, I might make a mistake again, but I will be aware in that moment so that I don't go into that icky place and sabotage myself, really. I mean, I did. I mean, cost myself some struggle there.
Exactly. And that's what the ego does. It sabotages us. You know, it's exactly what it does, because it doesn't want that we come into our power and into our thriving and into our radiance. It just doesn't want. It wants the domination of you. And you said another important thing. You said when you think about it and blame you and invent stories you should have done, blah, blah, blah. This is exactly what I would call ego talk, you know. The thinking, the going into stories. This is what is fundamental of what my concept of ego is. And when you are able not to talk, to talk yourself into stories like that, you should have done better, you should have before, if I had done this, then it would be this, and blah, 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 blah. We know that very well. If you just see what has happened or see what is happening without interpretation, without blaming, without creating any story, then you are in your what we call adult self. And when you are aware of your power, let's say, of your capacities, of what you really are, you know that this forgetting the number once doesn't really matter to your value. It doesn't diminish your value, not at all. And you wouldn't react like many people do, like, oh, I did it wrong, and I better don't show up again, or something like that. It wouldn't impact your self-awareness, I don't want to say self-image, but how can I say, your being. Yeah, I think this is the right word.
I still have to make up for my client who's going to receive her partial later. So I'll have to, do something to ameliorate that. So that's still what I have to do,
This is an interesting question, because when you are driven from the ego, you would do this in a certain way. And when you are guided by your adult self, you would do it in another way. And I wonder if you could imagine how your ego-drivenness would react to when you talk with your client.
Yeah, well, if I would do that, which I will not going to do, is to say, well, you had the wrong address in your PayPal account, so I shipped it to that. But that argument doesn't hold, because I've had her address before, and so it will fall on bare grounds. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah, and you make the point. You would try to deflect the responsibility, or to the other person, or to circumstances, to whatever, but you wouldn't take the responsibility. You wouldn't dare to say, oh, I'm sorry, I just forgot that. And please excuse me. I will send it as soon as possible. And that's it, what you say as an adult. As an ego-driven being, you would try to avoid that any guilt is on you. Very nice.
It's hard to own, Oh, it's icky. It's like cringing. But when I have done that, it's like, oh, done with that. I don't never need to do that again. And so for me, that's my reward for owning it, is that I got it. And if people can actually discover that for themselves, it's not that icky, right? It's not that unpleasant, because on the other side of that, then I have built maybe even a stronger connection, let's say, with my client. I should tell her honestly what happened, and then apologize. Of course I will do that, but that might also strengthen the connection with that person.
Absolutely, because you show yourself as human and not as a machine, a perfect machine. And normally people like that others are humans and not pretend to be something else. And it fits well into our discourse about being authentic. This is a moment of being authentic. And when you try to deflect, not reflect, the responsibility, you are not authentic,
And that is a very, very good point, Heidi. I like the moments of authenticity is that clarity that cuts through the, what shall I say, the confusion, the emotional debris that we come up with. It cuts through that and opens up to a clarity, and that clarity in the mind, in healing work I've done with clients, I've seen my clients actually achieve that, and in my own experience, that's the best place to be. That's the best place to be.
Yeah, what you are talking about is the vulnerability to admit that we are not perfect. And on the other hand, what we were talking about here with the many voices of ego, to be aware of our emotions, of our, how can you say, of our states of being triggered with our emotions, and to have a discernment. What is an younger self emotion? I mean, an emotion which has been a habit, which comes out of former times and has become a habit. So if something happens, you like immediately jump into it. You don't have a choice to understand that is that, or if it is a real, genuine, heartfelt emotion. These feel completely different. One is sort of, you know, you have a feeling that it's not, that you feel constricted, you feel not happy, and then it is an emotion in you which is really coming from your heart. You feel an expansion. So this, for short guideline to understand what sort of voices, what sort of emotions connected with these voices, and what sort of physical feeling is there present when you are in younger self situations, or when you are really connected authentically with yourself.
This is so important in relationship. I think this what you said there, Heidi, is the essence of actually have a successful relationship. And when I say relationship, is the relationship with ourselves first, and actually accepting all of those parts and working with them. It's like having a number of children around, right? And each one of them needs to have their say, but they can't go overboard, right?
Absolutely. It's really like having the inner family, but you are the parent, and you are a loving parent. You don't always beat them up when something happens, but you say, oh, darling, you will learn that, and I teach you, you know? And have them all together, respect them, allow them to grow, but don't allow them to lead you, because they are just too young. You are the one who needs to lead the whole family, and not them.
So it's like two people coming together and falling in love. They have an entourage of like 12 or 14 children each, with voices that the other person has to contend with. Can you imagine that? That's like a little bit challenging, right?
This is what normally happens, that people in this unconscious way enter into relationships, and they bring with them all their non-seen children inside, non-respected, non-guided children. They try to hide them, to press them down, you know, in the cellar. They shut them away, but they are stronger. And as soon as the first conflicts arrive, these come out. These come out, you know. Maybe even before, unconsciously, they might come out, and they may manifest as a slight not feeling well and feeling uncomfortable in some situations, but sooner or later they really will pop up. And then normally the relationship is in question, is challenged. And when people learn to hold their emotions, to learn how to handle them without shutting them down and without allowing them to really act out, but find a relationship to them, to these inner smaller little beings, then a relationship can flourish. And if both of the partners do that, then it's the relationship beyond your wildest dreams. I can guarantee you.
And it can be wonderful to have such relationship, but it requires, like you said, the awareness, the attention, and then monitoring your own inner self-talk, right? And your own little ego children, and really practice it. So how can we practice this, like from day to day? What is a word or something we can do to actually practice this?
The main word is awareness. Awareness. Be aware. Be aware what you do. Be aware what you think. Be aware what you say. And all the time, witness, witness, witness. And for instance, be aware when you think something, say something, and so on, and you beat up yourself. This is the main thing. How is my attitude towards myself, towards what I'm thinking, towards what I'm doing, towards what I'm believing? you know, and just be your own research object. Witness what is going on, and then you will figure out, oh, this might have been, and this, and here, this is an old relative, how do you say, an old false belief, you know. This I thought I have it overcome, but here it is still, You know, the awareness is the main thing. Develop awareness, and then have the tools, get the tools to shift perspective. And not only in your thinking, but in your whole being. Rewire your brain in some way.
I like that idea, like rewiring our brain, or our mind, rather.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes, like, how can you rewire something that you're using while you're using it and redirect it in the same times? Because sometimes maybe the system has to shut down, and if a person is like have a nervous breakdown, or an event happens that really shocks the whole being, maybe a death or some kind of event that's really shocking, I think that a time like that, if you have the awareness beforehand that you need to really let go of certain things, take advantage of the event, any event, to do that. Because if you're already put out of sorts in some way, you might as well go all the way and say, okay, I'm going to change that too. What do you think about that?
I think every, what we call negative experience, is an opportunity to learn that. To learn what is my inner attitude toward it, and shift deliberately the attitude. Instead of trying to push it away, what is happening because it's uncomfortable, go there with curiosity. Oh, what is happening just now? Oh, look, in this case, I behave in this way. Look at that, you know. Be curious, be curious. And when you have understood the ways in you are behaving or thinking, then you can change it. But first, you have to know what you are doing. And then you have the decision power to change it. To just, you know, sometimes it takes only a deep breath. Sometimes it takes 2 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour. Sometimes it takes 3 days until you come out of this triggered state. But keep in mind to say to yourself, I can change that. I have the power to do that. And you will. Just go in the direction. Do never ever be again the victim of your own psychology, of your own beliefs, of your own thoughts, of your own feelings. Know that there is a way which will lead you out of that.
Well, those words are so helpful, because when a person like myself, also, if I know I'm going to come through this, I can manage this, I can do the changes, I can actually affect my life. Just that very sentence, I can affect my life. I can actually change inside of me something so that I can get something that I want in the world and achieve something, whatever that is, in relationship or in any other area. It's instilling a sense of power for myself, and other people may feel that too, that actually we can do something. And that's so positive, and that's so helpful.
Yeah, and it's the truth. It is the truth.
Wow, what an episode this week has been. So what else would you like to talk about to the end here on this presentation? Is there anything else you want to mention about many voices of ego?
Yeah, as I said, there are many voices of ego. Find out which ones are the most important for you. Normally we have in different situations different ones, but there are some fundamental ones which guide your life. For me, for instance, it was I'm not good enough, so I have to learn everything perfect and, you know, write everything out before I do a presentation like here. I have learned not to do that anymore, but trust that I will find the right words, even in a language which is not mine. So find out which is your fundamental. I'm alone, I'm invisible, I don't have, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm powerless, for instance. There are quite a few, and try to recognize which one is driving you. And then the work can begin.
This today has been very helpful, I think, Heidi, and I want to thank you. And we can reconvene next week, same time on Thursdays, 3 o'clock in Europe, and now it's summertime, right? So it's 10 o'clock next week, right, in Eastern time. Thank you so much, Heidi, for this week's episode, and we'll see you